Well, this morning, for the first time, we are hearing from the Dalton police officer whose traffic stop led to a 19-year-old staying in ICE custody for 2 weeks. The department says the officer pulled over the wrong car.
You had death threats?
Death threats for myself and for the family, yeah.
Really?
In his resignation letter, Officer Leslie Allen O'Neill says the department is not properly defending him against accusations that stemmed from that arrest.
At one point, my daughter was so scared that she changed her last name on her profile just to not someone recognize that my last name with hers. And she was so scared that she didn't go to school for a couple days.
Dalton police say they dropped the charges against Jimena Arias Cristobal after dash camera video showed Officer O'Neill pulled over the wrong truck, stopping Arias Cristobal's dark gray pickup instead of a black one. That arrest led to her being held at an ICE detention facility for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was under the impression that she would be able to get bonded out and just have the court for the traffic violation. My understanding is when it became aware to the public off of social media and the news that she did have an immigration status and that she was getting deported. After the situation blew up with the media, we decided to go ahead and get the video and preserve it. And that was like almost a week later, that Sunday. I think that was the 5th was a Monday. I could be wrong, but that next Sunday, me and my supervisor downloaded the video to have it there. And that's when we discovered, when we did the recording after the fact, that it was actually the wrong vehicle.
This is the resignation letter Dalton police officer Leslie Allen O'Neill submitted. His wife confirms with 11 Alive News that the letter she posted on Facebook details his reason for leaving. In it, O'Neill says his resignation stems from the department's, quote, inadequate response to and defense against public accusations of false arrest, which arose after a charge from a valid arrest was publicly dropped without explanation.
With the press release, all it said was that I pulled over the wrong vehicle and they were going to drop charges. It left it open for the slander, the allegations, the misunderstanding that I did a false arrest, which I didn't do a false arrest.
Officer O'Neill says he has faced widespread defamation that the department has been silent about, saying he could no longer effectively do his job without, quote, fear of further backlash from the community.
Well, especially with her lawyers in their press conference, they were willing to go after me criminally to get her U visa, and not directly saying that I was a bad egg, but insinuating that I was the bad egg. I said, hey, did you actually watch the whole video? Did you actually see how I actually treated her and the things I did trying to help her out and letting her make phone calls and stuff like that? He's like, you know what? I based that off of a video clip where they probably raised the volume when he said, have you ever been to jail? Well, you're going now. Just within that little bit of time frame before there was already people saying, oh, you're pulling me over just because I'm brown, or you're pulling me over for this, and they even did that to a Hispanic officer. They're like, I'm Hispanic myself. That has nothing to do with this. We don't see the color of people's skin, their gender, their age from the back of a vehicle. There's too much tint, and there's a seat rest blocking from all that. And I wasn't really wanting to bring politics into it, because politics, other than how the laws were created, have no impact on what I do and how I did my job.
Right. That's understandable. You wanted to be apolitical.
I didn't want to be a political poster boy.
The man at the center of a traffic stop that sparked national headlines. The stop involved a college student who was later transferred to immigration authorities. The traffic charges were dropped, but the personal and professional fallout was just beginning. In this exclusive interview, O'Neill opens up for the first time about what happened, what went wrong, and what the public hasn't heard until now. It's a reminder that behind every headline, there are people, families living through the aftermath. This episode goes beyond those headlines and into the human experience behind the badge. I'm Nikki Renfro, and this is Safe Nation.
again, this is a conversation, and I'm so glad that you decided to sit down with me and have this conversation today. I think it was a side of the story that needed to be told. You had been silent about an incident that happened from May 5th, 2025, where you were a police officer, right?
Yes.
With Dalton Police Department in Georgia, and you made a traffic stop that day, not unlike thousands and thousands of other traffic stops that were probably taking place somewhere else around the world on that same date. But yours ended up being a little bit different, probably not what you expected when you made a traffic stop. And we'll get into the details of that. But first, I just want to find out how you're doing. How have you been doing since this traffic stop that we're going to get into?
It's been very stressful dealing with a lot that's going on, especially with the public slander and hate and discontent. But I have a huge support system, so I've been hanging in there.
Yeah. So tell me about your career background. Now, Dalton PD is not the first place you've worked in law enforcement, right?
No, so I did 13 years in the military. I was in the Marine Corps. After the military, I decided that to get into law enforcement in Arizona. I was an officer in Arizona for 5 years. Worked for 2 different agencies. The second agency I was with, I was just a patrol officer, but I also had a position as a logistics driver for the special enforcement team. And then after deciding to move to Georgia to be close to my kids, I got a job with the Dalton Police Department. I was with them for almost 6 years. Did further training and education and experience. I was able to get my patrolman first class with the Dalton Police Department.
Okay. All right. So generally speaking, you had a pretty progressive career. You were progressing along well with the police department. Any issues there at the police department? Had anything come up in the past where there may have been something controversial about a traffic stop?
No, not at all. Nothing controversial about a traffic stop. Anything against my character.
Okay. When you first got into law enforcement, and you can include the time when you were in Arizona as well, but in your mind, what does a law enforcement job entail in terms of what was your intent for being a law enforcement officer? Kind of what do you think it would be?
I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to protect and serve, find the resources for people that were in need, going and getting a family out of the woods, finding resources for them, making that difference.
Hmm. Yeah, not unlike a lot of officers. Well, let's get into it about the traffic stop. May 5th, 2025. Tell me what happened leading up to this traffic stop that ended up garnering national attention.
So the intersection I was at was a intersection that's known to have high accident rate. I was positioned to where I could see hands-free cell phones, and that's what I was looking for. And at that intersection, I saw the hands-free coming to the intersection, but at the intersection, when the light turns red, there's a sign that says no right on red. So when noticed that the light turned red, I looked over to the right, saw the back end of a dark colored truck making a right-hand turn on the red.
Okay. Now, when you say it hands-free, what do you mean?
Hands-free cell phone. How it basically is with cell phones, it doesn't matter if their phone's on, off, texting, calling, doing a TikTok dance. If your phone is supported by your body while you're driving is where it's illegal. So I was just looking inside the vehicles, focusing on inside the vehicles to see if anybody had their phones in their hand doing whatever.
Now, are you on a traffic unit?
No, I'm just a patrol officer.
Okay. And so in between calls, you sometimes do
Yeah, I can be a
traffic
little bit
enforcement?
proactive, do traffic enforcement, and then we also do neighborhood checks and stuff like that. So at this time, I was just doing traffic enforcement at one of the busy intersections.
Okay, so you see this dark colored, you said pickup truck?
Yes.
Okay. And you observed them make a turn, an illegal turn.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and then what happened?
I pulled out onto the main road because the light was still red. I was behind another car. Once I was able to get on the road, I noticed that there was a dark colored truck in the left-hand turn lane making a left-hand turn because it's green for them to go. So I knew I had to pass the first truck. Once I passed that first truck, I looked ahead where there's about the area the truck that I saw make the red on red would have been at. I'm like, that had to be the vehicle, so I pulled that vehicle over.
Now, you're saying dark colored vehicle. What color was the vehicle?
The actual color of the vehicle was dark gray.
Okay.
Like I said, when I looked over to the right, it was just the last minute seeing the back end of a dark colored truck. I couldn't tell what kind of truck it was. The emblems, I couldn't see any emblems. I just saw the back end, the back quarter panel pretty much of a dark colored truck.
Okay. And anything else stand out about this vehicle? Any, like a bumper sticker,
No.
any other markings? And this was what time of day?
This was early in the morning.
Okay, so
On
daylight.
shift. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you get in behind this pickup truck, and then what happened?
I pulled over the truck. We went off to a side road and we pulled into a parking lot and then conducted my traffic stop from there.
Okay. So what did you discover on this stop? Or was it just like any other stop you've ever done?
So just like any other stop, when you're behind a vehicle, you can't see who's in it, anything like that. So I approached the driver, the young woman, told her who I was, why I pulled her over, if there was any reason for her to be doing that, and then asked her for her license.
Okay. And after you asked for her license, what happened?
She told me that she did not have a license at first, and then she mentioned that she had an international license. With an international license, it's a translation of a license from another country. So you need to have both those documentations on you while you're driving. She didn't have either. The only identification she had was a college ID.
Okay. Okay. And then what happened?
Just normal traffic stop. I was trying to have someone come to the traffic stop. That's why I was asking for the owner of the vehicle, like trying to get in contact with them or her mom to possibly bring that documentation to see if that is valid.
Okay.
And when I discovered that she did not have a valid license and she admitted that she shouldn't have been driving and she knew it was wrong to be driving, because of Georgia Bureau of Investigations has a list of fingerprintable offenses for the Dalton Police Department, we have to arrest the people that violate those fingerprintable violations. So I took her to the jail
Okay.
for driving without a license.
Okay. Because she did not have an actual physical license and she was not a licensed driver, you're saying that's why you took her to jail?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's take a look at the traffic stop. And so there'll probably be some, I think it lasted almost 30 minutes that you were out there, roughly maybe
Yep.
27 minutes or so. So, of course, we won't go through the entire thing because there is some back and forth with dispatch, them trying to run information and so forth. But maybe you can just kind of talk through the beginning of it, and then we may fast forward to some other
Okay.
spots along the way, okay? So what's happening right here?
This is where we already turned right, and this was that first dark truck that I saw make the right-hand turn. I looked forward ahead of time and saw the next dark truck that was in the right lane.
Okay, can
So
we
I just thought-
pause right there? So you're saying that black truck, it looked like a black truck, the one on in the left lane here?
Yes.
It was a Dodge truck
Yes.
that originally,
That was in the left-hand turn lane. So I knew that I had to pass at least that black truck because it was making that left-hand turn. And when I got behind that, I looked ahead to figure out about how far the vehicle that would have made the red on red would be at.
okay.
And I saw this truck that's up there a little bit ahead, and that was about the right spot it should have been. And I made the decision to pull over that vehicle.
Okay, so you decide to turn in after behind this one.
And you see my lights on, so that's when I turned on the lights to pull her over. And we go a little bit forward and pull into a parking lot.
Okay. Now, did it dawn on you during this interaction with this driver that, hey, wait a minute, this was not
No, not at all. She didn't. When I explained to her why I pulled her over, she didn't say anything that I didn't make that right turn. I turned whatever way, or it wasn't me. My whole time, my whole thought process on this was that this was the truck.
okay? So she never disputed
No,
making that right turn to begin with.
no.
Okay. Now, when you met, what was the hesitation for? What do you think you saw right there?
I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
other traffic.
Okay. Now we can't hear what's happening here. Why weren't we able to hear?
So with a lot of the Dalton Police Department patrol vehicles, except for the new ones that we've gotten, we have an audio pack
Okay.
that has to sit on a cradle to be charged. With it being early morning and getting out into a busy intersection, I just forgot to grab that at first. And then when I got to the back of the vehicle, I realized I didn't have it. Put it on, and that's when you hear the sound
Okay. So we have video, but we just don't have the audio
of this portion.
of this portion right here. Okay.
Like I said, this portion is just who I am, why I pulled you over, any reason, and then can I see your license.
Right.
At this point, I had gotten back to my car, realized, and put it on.
Okay.
There should have been volume on the inside of the car. I don't know why that didn't happen.
Jenny Pichardo.
Who is
I
she
don't
to
know.
you?
She's basically like an aunt to me. She's really close to my mom.
All right. Where's she at?
Work.
Where does she work?
I don't
You don't know?
know, sir. I just know her, but I don't know where she works with.
Okay.
So here you did put forth effort a few times in trying to find out who the vehicle belonged to, that sort of thing.
Yes.
How to get in touch with someone. What was your attempt there in trying to again, we're not playing all of it, but in your attempts to ask questions about, okay, who does the vehicle belong to? Can you get in touch with that person?
What I'm trying to do is, because how she told me that she had this international driver's license and a license from the country, I was trying to get someone there that could probably provide that to see if that will be a factor of either making arrest or not arrest. If it is valid, there's no arrest. So that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get that documentation there, either through the owner of the truck. And there's times where I asked her to try to get hold of her mom or someone that could possibly bring that documentation so we could help her out with not making an arrest because she has a license.
So it was your intent to get what was needed so that you would not have to make an arrest. Is that fair to say?
Yes. She said that she had an international license. And like I said, with an international license, you have to have the other license with it. She didn't have either, but I was trying to get those because if it was valid, there was no need to make an arrest. In the system that we have no way to check international licenses or other country licenses. We only have the 50 states, the United States.
So she was saying that she was doing a favor.
So yeah, at first she tells me that she was bringing the truck here for the owner, that the owner had gotten a ride from somebody. And then she later on tells me, or maybe it was before, that she was going to, there's a coffee shop on that corner, and she was going there to study.
So what's going through your head at this point?
Pretty much what's going through my head was just trying to get that documentation there, to determine if I have to make an arrest for no license or if the documentation is there.
Okay.
My intent was to just give a warning for the no ride on red. That's normally what I do.
Okay. This is the actual arrest. This is when I think you're getting ready to have her step out of the vehicle.
Okay. Put your mom on the phone.
My mom doesn't speak any. She only understands it. Because of my sister.
All right, do me a favor, open this window.
Roll it up.
Roll it up. And go ahead and step out when you're done. So in the state of Georgia, when you drive without a license, you know what happens? Have you ever been to jail?
No, sir.
Oh, you're going.
Sir, I cannot go to jail. I have my finals next week, and my family really depends on this.
You shouldn't be driving.
I know, but
You'll get released.
my family doesn't have the money to release me. It's only my mom. It's my mom with 3 daughters, and she's barely paying off my college. She's barely paying it off. I'm barely getting school here. I have no other way.
You shouldn't be driving.
I know. It was a one-time mistake. I never do this.
All right, go ahead and turn around for me. You have to go to jail by the state of Georgia. Hands behind your back.
Can I call my mom?
Yeah, we'll call your mom. Do you need anything out of the truck other than your phone?
No, sir. I do not.
I'll grab your phone.
Go ahead. There's somebody that can pick up the truck. Yenny can.
Yenny can?
Yeah,
All right.
she can.
How do I open it?
¿Qué pasó, Jimé?
Mami, me están arrestando.
Ya, Jimé, no te dije, hija. Te
I
lo
know, I'm
dije.
sorry, mami.
¿Qué pasa, Jimé? ¿Y qué va a pasar? Jimena, ¿sabes lo que va a pasar?
Yes, mami, just llámale a Yenny que venga a recoger la troca, mami. Yo te llamo de allá, ¿ok?
Let her know.
Hold on. Espera, mami.
Dile que hay de
Let
que
her know
camioneta.
that in about a couple hours, once we're done with the paperwork, she can call to the jail to see what all went and how much or what it's going to take to get you out, okay?
Okay, mami dice que nada más vas a tener que ir a pagar.
¿Y te sacan?
Sí. So ponte busa,
Ok.
ya habla con
Ok.
Yenny. Ponte
Ya.
agarra de
¿Quién
los...
tiene que ir? ¿Jenny? ¿Jenny tiene que ir a pagar?
No sé, no importa quién, nada más agarra a alguien.
Ok,
Y,
ok.
y en los
Ya,
7,000...
ya lo tengo.
Does she have any questions?
I'll ask her. Mami, los $7,000 están
Ajá.
donde está mi Biblia al lado de mi lámpara, abajo en ese cajón, abajo de unos libros, ahí están los $7,000. ¿Tienes unas preguntas? ¿Tienes preguntas para que le pregunte?
No, nada más dile, ya te llevan para allá, ¿verdad?
Yes,
¿No sabe
en unas
ticket ni
cuantas
nada de
horas.
cuánto va a ser?
No, no sé. Nada más en unas cuantas horas puedes llamar, ¿ok? A la cárcel.
Ay, Jimenita, a ver si no te llevan para allá, hija, ¿eh? Así le dijeron a tu papá.
Ok, bye, mami.
Ok, bye.
I love you.
So you were allowing her to speak with, who was that?
That was her mom.
That was her mom. So we got in touch with them, did end up getting in touch with the mom. And so she had an opportunity to speak with her before you transported her to the jail. Okay, so that pretty much ends it at the scene. Now, when you arrived at the jail, what was the process there?
So once I bring the subject to the jail, I hand them over to jail staff. They conduct their procedures for booking, fingerprints, photos, check for statuses and stuff like that.
Why did you decide to actually take her to jail? Could you have released her on a citation for improper turn and a citation for no license?
Like I said earlier, when it comes to the no license, it's one of the listed fingerprintable offenses by the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. You know, our procedures for Dalton Police Department is to take them to jail to be fingerprinted.
Okay. So at what time did immigration get involved?
Whenever booking did their process, I had nothing to do with that.
So you don't have a direct line.
No direct line with ICE, immigration, none of them. My procedure is to take them to jail, give them the property that they had, which was hers, was just the ID, and then they take over on their booking process.
Now, would you typically call a supervisor? Is that a part of your protocol?
Nothing like this. There was no reason to call a supervisor. There was just a normal someone driving without a license.
Okay. And I noticed that in there you said to her that, that she could tell. I think she was talking with her mom at the time on the phone. I think you said that she could call, and, or she could come by and find out in a couple of hours to see what it would take to get her out. Was it your understanding that she would actually be released?
Yeah, I was under the impression that she would be able to get bonded out and just have the the court for the traffic violation.
Okay. How many of these, stops have you made where, immigration was involved?
Oh, I don't know. I was unaware that they actually did get involved.
Okay. So you're saying you don't know because if it happened, if they were involved on some of your previous stops, then you were not notified. Is that
Yeah,
what you're
we don't get notified, not at all.
Okay. So to your knowledge, is this the first one that you've, been involved in where immigration was involved?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so now if this happened on May 5th, then what happened when you got done with this stop? Did you continue on with the rest of your shift or what?
Yeah, just continue on with the rest of the day.
Okay. No one called, no one asked any questions. There were no
No.
inquiries from anyone about this stop.
No.
Okay. At what point did the inquiries start coming in?
Um, my understanding is when it became aware to the social or to the public off of social media and the news that she did have an immigration status and that she was getting deported for it.
Mm, okay. Okay. So all of the buzz was around social media.
Social media, the news.
Okay. And then now what was happening internally with the police department? When did you get notified or when did someone with the police department speak with you about it?
So after the situation blew up with the media, um, we decided to go ahead and get the video and preserve it. And that was like almost a week later, that Sunday. I think that was the 5th was a Monday. I could be wrong, but that next Sunday, me and my supervisor downloaded the video to have it there. And that's when we discovered, when we did the recording after the fact, that it was actually the wrong vehicle.
Okay. And when you discovered that it was the wrong vehicle, how did that make you feel?
I really don't know. Because of all of the media attention, it kind of like, oh, Jesus is going to probably make more to it. That's really the concern I had or the thoughts I had on it.
Okay. So were there any thoughts or feelings around how it impacted the female driver's life?
So, as my position as a law enforcement officer, patrol officer, I have no responsibility of what affected her with the immigration status and all that. I, as a human and a law enforcement officer, someone that's protecting and serving, I feel for the situation that she had gone through, and I hope the best for her in her future.
Okay. That's what you were feeling when you first discovered that it was the wrong vehicle?
Well, with the where I discovered that it was the wrong vehicle, like I said, it was just concerned how the media was gonna handle it and if it was gonna make it more of a deal or concerned about how it's gonna go from there.
Okay. And then how did it go from there? What happened after that, after you guys reviewed the video, and I'm sure a lot was happening in the days after
That
that.
very next day, the department made a public statement saying that I had pulled over the wrong vehicle and all the charges were gonna be dropped. I would They left it open for people's perception or understanding of what actually really happened. Um, Allegations of a false arrest, which was not the case. It was a good faith stop based on what I observed and the circumstances that led up to everything. So, I would have hoped that after the allegations of I did a false arrest and I was being slandered and my reputation and my credibility was being slandered, that the department would speak up and say, hey, it was not a false arrest. It was good faith. And you kind of explain that. And that there's nothing in my record that is influences or shows bad character.
But you're saying they didn't say that though.
No.
And so were you aware that the press conference, and you referring to the press conference, or was this
It was a press release
press release?
by that brought out the video.
Okay. Okay. So you were having to read the press release when everyone else did,
Yes.
or you didn't know in advance?
That morning, I was given a call from some of the administration,
Mhm.
and the city solicitor was there, and all she was asking me is if there was another violation that the truck that I pulled over had made, and didn't leave me room to explain or anything like that. They said, okay, thank you. And then next thing I know, I'm seeing the press release.
Okay. Okay. So then how did that make you feel after being made aware of what was in this press release?
Like I said, it was with the press release, all it said was that I pulled over the wrong vehicle and that they were going to drop charges. It left it open for the slander, the allegations, the misunderstanding that I did a false arrest, which I didn't do a false arrest.
Okay. How did that make you feel toward your agency?
I felt like they weren't looking out for me as the officer, not explaining to the public and allowing the slander, the hate, the people's opinions off of not knowing the whole story, not knowing the whole truth.
You didn't feel like you had support?
No, not from the department as a whole.
Was it just the administration or your fellow officers?
I would say the administration, the fellow officers that I work with, my immediate supervision, they all supported me and understood what was going on and knew the whole story and knew who I am and what I was about.
Would you have done anything any differently?
In regards to the traffic stop, there's nothing, I had no other responsibility to do anything differently. It makes me think of how a simple traffic warning that I was intending just to do could lead to something more serious. And with that, that's about it.
Okay. Okay. Would you do anything any differently regarding your resignation? Because you resigned over this. You made that decision to do so.
I didn't think it was because of the public perception of what they assumed of how things were and the false allegations is going to make it difficult for me to work in the city of Dalton. It was going to make my job and other officers nationwide difficult for them to do their jobs when, as a patrol officer, we have no steps in the immigration process, but this kind of makes it harder for all law enforcement that we have to have that in our mindset now too.
You think you kind of got swept up into some sort of political nightmare?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so it expands outside of the city of Dalton. When you're seeing this on national news, you probably never thought you would end up on national news.
World news.
World news, yeah,
It was all over the world.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Were the walls caving in when that happened?
Very stressful a little bit, and just the uncertainty of my future and what I'm going to do and where I'm going to go.
And what about even in terms of who you can talk to about it and who you can trust?
That's always something that we need to do, especially with law enforcement. There's people that you could talk to that have their previous experiences, that understand the whole steps and understanding of the whole process, and they're ones that you could talk to, and not people not having that knowledge and experience. It's hard for them to understand. The best thing I could do is try to explain to them the full procedures and that it wasn't on a patrol officer to dictate immigration status or getting deported. It was just my job to do the traffic stop, and discovered that she had no license and make the arrest.
Okay. What would you say to her, to the driver, if she were listening right now? What would you say?
I wish that she finds an honest and fair path for citizenship, and I wish the best for her future.
Okay. And what about to your um, former fellow law enforcement officers from the PD? What would you say to them?
And I just wish that in my situation that it would have been explained better, um, so that the public has a better understanding of what actually happened.
Would you have stuck around if someone had from leadership had explained what was happening next?
That's hard to say. Just within that little bit of time frame before there was already people saying, "Oh, you're pulling me over just because I'm brown," or "You're pulling me over for this," and they even did that to a Hispanic officer. They're like, "I'm Hispanic myself. That has nothing to do with this." We don't see the color of people's skin, their gender, their age from the back of a vehicle. There's too much tint, and there's a seat rest blocking from all that.
Mhm. Okay. So what's next for you?
Well, I've been considering different options. I've spent a huge portion of my life protecting and serving, and I hope I could continue to do that.
Okay. You think it'll be in law enforcement?
Possibly, I hope.
Okay. All right. Now, in terms of any protocols or um, do you think there should be any changes to protocols that might help with this in the future?
Regarding the situation, there's really nothing a law enforcement officer can do. I would like to see more definition in national law or federal law that protects for immigration for simple like traffic stops and simple misdemeanors like non-violent criminals. Um, I had no clue, no idea until this happened. That's how it was.
So, let me make sure I understand. So, if a person is here, um, and is not a licensed driver, and let's say that they have not followed the proper immigration protocol to even be here, if they make like a simple, you know, infraction like what this was, as opposed to someone who's a violent criminal, are you saying that there should be some room there for a
I-
difference on how it's handled?
And in my opinion, I don't think that like with her situation, she's was brought here when she was 4 years old. She had no say in that. Um, she has gone to school. She was trying to do college. Making a simple traffic violation. I don't think that immigration should be as strict on something like that, whereas a felony or a heinous crime or something like that. I don't think that just taking them straight to a detention center, especially at 19, is young woman didn't deserve.
I see. Okay. Do any of the if you could give a word of advice to officers who have to continue doing this work every day, what would you say to them?
Just do your job and do it right.
Okay. But even if they do it and do it right,
Just hang in there, and hopefully you have the right support in the department actually elaborates and explains the whole situation.
Should they educate themselves a little bit about their policies and so forth and what to expect?
Oh yeah, you always need to know your policies within the department, know what you need to do and how to do it. Just like with case law and state law, just have an idea of what it is you're doing and the knowledge of what you can and can't do.
You had death threats?
Death threats for myself and for the family, yeah.
Really? What kind of threats?
That they were going to come and to my house and find me and take care of it themselves.
And these were written, like they were sending messages or phone calls, or what was
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Both?
Messages, just messages, no phone calls.
Oh.
I had fully shut down my social media for a good while of it. At one point, my daughter was so scared that she changed her last name on her profile just to not someone recognize that my last name with hers. And she was so scared that she didn't go to school for a couple of days.
Oh my goodness. For your daughter to want to change her last name.
She just took her last name off.
That's what I'm saying, to change it temporarily, not, to not have it on there or be associated with. So this really has affected your life. Yeah. More than what anyone probably knows. It's the job of a law enforcement officer is it's not an easy task. It's not an easy task being a regular everyday citizen either. So just to make that part clear.
Oh, yeah.
For
Exactly.
people as well, because some people go through a lot in dealing with law enforcement. We certainly don't want to minimize that.
So yeah, there was a local politician that was very vocal on from the whole beginning to the end. And one of the things that he said was he didn't agree with how I spoke to her. I asked him, "Hey, I know friends with his family. When I first moved here, his mom was my property manager. I said, hey, did you actually watch the whole video? Did you actually see how I actually treated her and the things I did trying to help her out and letting her make phone calls and stuff like that?" He's like, "You know what? I based that off of a video clip where they probably raised the volume when he said, 'Have you ever been to jail? Well, you're going now.'" That's all he heard. I'm like, well, you sit down with me and I'll walk you through this whole video. And he actually did that. And it changed his perspective a little bit and put a little bit of defense on my side. Which this politician is very open to reforming the immigration stuff too. So it's kind of hard working into him with that, but it worked out.
When you get the whole story and when you get all of the information, sometimes it makes a difference. It makes a big difference when people, if they're afforded that. But most of the time, no one's afforded the full story. And so as people begin to learn more, educate themselves more, then they can sort of understand a little bit better. So, yeah, I hope, my hope is that this would bring some education around what happened. So,
Well, especially with her lawyers in their press conference, they were willing to go after me criminally to get her U visa. And not directly saying that I was a bad egg, but insinuating that I was the bad egg. And I wasn't really wanting to bring politics into it because politics, other than how the laws were created, have no impact on what I do and how I did my job.
right. That's understandable. You wanted to be apolitical.
Everyone be a
I
political
get it.
poster boy.
But you've certainly given us a glimpse behind the badge as to what it looks like, how this affects you, and really what you were thinking on that day. And so for that, I appreciate you.
Thank you for letting me get my story out there.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you accepting the invitation.
Today's conversation gave us a rare look into the pressures and decisions faced by law enforcement officers and the consequences that follow when things don't go as planned. At Safe Nation, we're here to ask the hard questions, to humanize the headlines, and to offer space for dialogue around safety, trust, and accountability. If you found this episode insightful, please share it with someone. Subscribe to Safe Nation Podcast on YouTube and leave a review. Your engagement helps us keep these important stories in front of the people who need to hear them. I'm Nikki Renfro. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you for being part of the conversation.